What is up, Pitt fans? Welcome to a late night edition of the PG Pitt Show brought to you by FanDuel. It is darn near midnight here at the JMA Wireless Dome in Syracuse, New York, where Pitt just knocked off Syracuse by a final score of 30-13. The Panthers are 5-2 overall, 3-1 in ACC play, despite a pretty ugly effort, quite honestly, here in Northern New York. Abby, it was not pretty, but the Panthers still escaped with a win.
No, it wasn't pretty. You would have thought maybe it would have been, especially with, Syracuse is just a lower caliber team than a Florida State. And so, with how hard it was, we really have to look at how many starters this team was. I hate blaming it on injuries, but there were so many players. If they weren't out already, went out. Kyle Lewis, Desmond Reed didn't come back after limping in the fourth quarter. We had him for a long time. And I mean, the list goes on. And I thought, like you said, not pretty, but they grinded through, made a couple of key plays on the defensive end to really just, keep the momentum going. And we're able to pull it out, which is huge for this team's momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. And you alluded to all of the starters that they were missing. It wasn't just starters. I mean, even the defensive line, there were backups out. Pitt has a laundry list of injuries that they are dealing with right now. Got some reinforcements in the form of Cruz Brookins and Joey Zielinski being back for this game. But overall, I mean, Pitt was dealing with a ton of injuries. Kyle Lewis goes out in this game. Rasheem Biles, the ACC's leading tackler, doesn't play at all in this game. Like I mentioned, the defensive line is been perpetually banged up. You have your starting left tackle out. But still, people just stepped up. Backup stepped up. And I can think of no two guys who stepped up more than Cam Lindsey and Nick Lapi. You got to throw Braylon Lovelace in there, too. He's been an Ironman for the Panthers at middle linebacker. But what can you say about Nick Lapi and Cam Lindsey, the two guys who, replacing the leading tackler in the ACC, Rasheem Biles, end up being the leading tacklers on the team, tied with 7 stops each?
I think you're always a little nervous when a backup is coming in, especially guys like Nick Lappy and Cameron Lindsey who haven't gotten a lot of reps. And if this entire linebacker core was in, they would be your 6th and 7th option. So you're a little bit nervous there. But I thought the way that they handled the pressure and they really was really good and they stepped up in key moments. It felt like they were in every single spot they were supposed to be at the exact time. I mean, both of them, they each had 7 tackles, which was a team high. They did a really good job shutting down Syracuse's run game. I mean, they only had 76 rushing yards, the Orange. And so it was really just good when you didn't really know what you were going to be able to get out of those guys for them to step up, especially in a game that was so needed to be grinded out. They were making the plays at the right time. They were doing exactly what they needed to do when a lot of other units were having issues, which was huge because you would have thought without Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles, the linebacker core looks marginally different. And it did, but not enough to impact the game, which I think was huge for Lindsey and Lappy to just maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that they were kind of able to keep up a certain level of play was really huge. You never are going to expect them to play like Rasheem Biles or Kyle Lewis, but they were more than capable as backups. And I think the most impressive thing about this Pitt win, at least on the defensive side of the ball, was that they did it without a ton of splash plays. Like, Syracuse had 12 tackles for loss. Pitt ended up with 8, but I think that number got inflated down the stretch. Only 2 sacks as well. So it's not like they were, the interceptions that they got kind of gifted by Ricky Collins were huge, but in the run game, they were just beating Syracuse down after down after down. And Pat Narduzzi said in the post-game press conference that there was maybe a little chatter about them being too small up front and that Syracuse was just going to be able to run it down their throat. But clearly that was not the case. Clearly that did not happen. Pitt was really able to maintain, like you said, a high level of play against the run game. Without 2 of their best players on defense. They're 2 best players on defense, and I think it's not even that much of a stretch to say they're 2 of the best players on the team. So really, really massive from Cam Lindsey and Nick Lappy. Nick Lappy knew he was going to start before this game. It was pretty late in the week that he knew that, but Cam Lindsey showing up in a spot, and going from a kind of seldom used reserve to a guy who's playing like starter level snaps or handling a starter level workload was really, really huge. And they're going to need more of that down the stretch. You have no idea when Biles will be back. You have no idea when Lewis will be back. We're waiting for updates on those guys, but in a game like this, it was much needed, and it was impressive how consistent they were down to down against the run game. And Abby, it was extremely necessary for these guys to step up in these spots because the offense did not look like the unit that we had seen them be for the past couple weeks with Mason Heinschel at the controls. It seemed like he hit a wall a little bit. He struggled down at Florida State, right? He wasn't super clean, threw a couple of interceptions, threw another interception today, but it just seemed like a lot of the simple stuff wasn't really working for him. But I think it all kind of started with the offensive line. They struggled pretty mightily today.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Heinschel went 13 for 24 for 143 yards, one interception, and I believe he was sacked 5 times, which, sometimes that's on the quarterback, but a lot of that, like you said, was on the offensive line today. You're already down Keith Gueva, who went out a couple of games ago, and Jeff Percy's not back in. And I thought, for the most part, Kendall Stanley and Ryan Coretta have been doing a good job filling in. And then Kendall Stanley had the game that he did specifically. It just felt like every issue was coming from that left side, which was the left side. So it was a little bit frustrating on that end, but at the same time, that it's because they aren't starters, but it shouldn't be. We should not be having that many issues with how many games we're in at this point. And so the amount of penalties that the offensive line as a whole, with Kendall Stanley having 5 of those, is just an issue. And then they let Mason get touched too many times, and they weren't opening up enough holes. Desmond Reed, Kyrie and Turner, and Jules Goff had to be pretty crafty on the run game because it just felt like the blocking wasn't as strong as it should have been.
Yeah, Kendall Stanley was really, it's hard not to notice him, right? Those 5 penalties, and I believe 3 came in a span of 2 drives, if I remember correctly. But yeah, you let your quarterback get sacked 7 times. It was 7 sacks on the day, right? Even 5 is way too many. But, anytime you let that happen, the rest of the offense is going to suffer. And for an offense that is so dependent on throwing the ball, just nothing was kind of in sync today. And it was a little bit discouraging how often not only was Syracuse able to get pressure on Mason Heinschel, and there were a couple times where I thought he did hold on to the ball a little bit too long.
Agreed.
But for a guy who was under pressure for so long, the fact that there was also sticky coverage in the secondary from Syracuse, like guys were just unable to get open in the time necessary for Pitt to keep moving the ball and keep picking up yards in decent enough chunks. It seemed like he settled in maybe a little bit towards the start of the second half, and he played the offense as a whole, I think, played a lot cleaner in the second half. But yeah, the biggest play of the day was really the 68-yard punt return from Kenny Johnson that gave Pitt a 10-point lead going into halftime. There was absolutely nothing going on for Pitt offensively. Mason Heinschel delivers a lightning strike at the beginning of the game with the 36-yard touchdown run, but then you don't score a touchdown again until that punt return from Kenny Johnson with 2 seconds left in the first half. So, big shout out to Kenny Johnson. I think over 100 all-purpose yards, but 68 of them came on one play. So Pitt kind of got away with it a little bit here. All of the penalties put them behind the sticks, made it harder for them to play consistent offense. But it really seemed like a lot of their issues were self-inflicted, right? Even in the second half, there was still pressure getting to Heinschel. The offensive line wasn't playing fantastic, but when they stopped committing as many penalties, they were able to move the ball and at least get in the red zone and score some points, right? When they weren't doing that, when they were committing penalties, it was punt, an interception from Mason Heinschel that set up a Syracuse touchdown as well. So it's not even that this unit needs to be perfect the entire time, but when you're committing these many penalties, there's really just no way to get around that. You were just always going to be shooting yourself in the foot behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, and they really capitalized off of the plays that, the defense set up for them. Pitt had got 3 interceptions, like you said, pretty given to them, but Cruz Brookins, Tamon Lynam, and why am I blanking on the third one?
Kavir Baines.
Thank you, Kavir Baines on that last one. Like, all of those put the offense in prime positions, and they scored on all 3 of them. They didn't get a touchdown on all 3 of them, but I wonder, without those momentum changing plays like that Kenny Johnson punt return touchdown, like these interceptions, this game looks a lot different because they almost started to have, especially at the end of the first half, the body language was off. But then Kenny gets that touchdown, and you see things start to roll a bit, and then you get the other interceptions in the second half, and it just felt like they were like, okay, this isn't going to be good. It's not going to be pretty, but we're going to get it done. And like you said earlier, a win is a win. this is huge for this team. You know, you're 3-0 now. Or sorry, so you're on a 3-game win streak is what I mean. It's after midnight at this point. So and it's good to see that like they don't have to be perfect to win, but you can't do that against some of the teams at the tail end of their schedule.
Right. You're exactly right. They are going to have to get better if they want to survive that back end of the schedule. But for right now, they're 3-1 and staring down 2 games against, similarly struggling teams, right, in NC State and Stanford. So they'll get NC State at home next week. Then you have to hit the road to play Stanford, which is not easy. I believe they're leading Florida State right now, or at least as we live and breathe, last I checked. But Pitt has a chance to go into that second bye week at 7-2 and get ready to make a trip down to, or I believe, host Notre Dame as maybe a ranked opponent, as a team still with only 1 ACC loss, especially after Miami goes down on Friday night. This league just looks so much more wide open, and there's an opportunity for the taking here if the Panthers are ready to capture it. But again, lots to clean up. You get some inferior competition, quote unquote, over these next couple of weeks, and a chance to build some more momentum, especially if you can clean up a lot of the issues that we talked about tonight. But win is a win. They're keeping pace in the ACC, and Pitt is, I guess you could say, pretty lucky to escape from Syracuse with a 17-point victory. I think that gets lost in all of this, is that they covered. According to our friends at FanDuel, I believe the line got down to 9.5 at some point before kickoff, but the Panthers still managed to pull out a 3-score victory that did not feel like one at all. We appreciate you all turning into this episode of the PG Pitt Show. We'll have plenty of more coverage this weekend. Abby will have some volleyball coverage. There will be more basketball coverage as well, as the Panthers really open up their season on Sunday with an exhibition against Providence at the Pete. So make sure you're tuned in to post-gazette.com. Like this video, subscribe to the channel PG Pitt on YouTube, and make sure you're keeping up with everything that we have coming for you guys concerning Pitt athletics. Thanks for tuning in again, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.